You may have thought to yourself, wouldn't it be faster and cheaper to go the off-the-shelf e-learning route? Well, in this video, we're going to talk all about the pros and the cons of custom and off-the-shelf e-learning and have a conversation about which is the best route to go for you. Hi friends, I'm Vanessa Alzate, the founder and CEO of Anchor Training, and today we're going to talk all about custom and off-the-shelf e-learning content. And I know, as a custom training solution vendor, I know that a lot of you might think, well, of course she's going to say the custom route, but just stay around, let's talk. I actually have pros and cons of both, and I think that there is a good solution that meets your needs, and you just need to be well informed about which is the best route. So in my past life, I have looked at off-the-shelf content, and I've been approached by some vendors to resell some of their off-the-shelf content, and I think that there is definitely pros and cons to using both options, right? And it just really depends on your organization and kind of what the solution best is for your client. If you're an instructional designer, you're not sure about which is the best solution to recommend to them. So let's first talk about off-the-shelf e-learning. And so the pros. So the first thing, it's all done for you. In a world in which we're pulled into 75 million directions and doing 100 things at one time, isn't it nice that the content is already done for you? It's been sourced, it's been vetted, it's been reviewed. You don't have to worry about misspellings, this, that, or the other. So it's just an easy peasy, fast implementation because you can just upload the content right to your learning management system or wherever you're storing this content, which makes it really nice for those organizations that are kind of just starting up. They really want to embrace this idea of a learning culture and provide opportunities for their employees to grow not only in the work that they do day in and day out, but also professionally, right? Because you can get off-the-shelf courses on things like, not just like Microsoft and, how to use, certain software. You can get content that is more soft skills based that doesn't really necessarily change all the time, right? So like how to deal with a difficult customer, or even compliance training, right? So your sexual harassment, your OSHA training, just kind of those, that type of training that doesn't really change too often, is kind of set in stone, the content. It's really nice that you can take all of that and upload it right to your LMS and have a nice suite for all of your employees to utilize. And I'm not just saying that is for, new startups or new organizations. It's for anyone, even organizations that have been more established that didn't really embrace the idea of a learning culture. You can really build a really nice library through all of these through all of these off-the-shelf options. So another big pro, and it's probably one of the biggest for a lot of people that are looking at off-the-shelf versus custom content, is the fact that it is cheaper to implement. All of the content has been pre-built for you, so a lot of that cost is actually being distributed, not just, to you. Like, you don't have to pay for all of those courses to be done. It's being distributed over anyone who buys the content. So it comes at a much lower price point, which is really nice for those organizations that are just trying to get up and running and don't have the budget that it really can take to create all of these custom solutions, and all this custom content that really is necessary if you want to build a really great organizational platform where your employees can jump in and learn new skills and grow professionally and personally depending on the content that they choose, right? So maybe instead of going to like LinkedIn Learning, they're going to your LMS to have that opportunity for professional development. So it's definitely nice that it comes at a much lower price point, and it's something that feels more feasible for you to begin with. So let's talk about some of the cons of the off-the-shelf e-learning. First is that it is hard to customize. There are some vendors that do allow you to customize certain things and certain maybe slides or sections of modules, depending on your own business rules or the state that you're in, depending on what that content is. But a lot of times it's kind of like you get what you get and you don't get upset. So that is something to consider. So it's really important to really think about the content that you are purchasing and how it suits your needs at your organization. So if you need something that is more unique to you, then off-the-shelf route is probably not the best for you. So earlier we just talked about, that it does come at a lower price point. Another thing that you're going to want to think about is the recurring licensing fees. So typically with off-the-shelf content, you do license them for a certain time period. You don't just get it and it's yours forever. And with that licensing fee comes, updates and all of those things, which is really nice. Or if something breaks, like when Flash went away, if anything was built on Flash, they would be providing you with the updates so you can continue to use those packages. However, that is a cost that does recur over time. So it's something that you really have to look at your budget and think, is that a cost that I can continue to incur year after year? Or is it something that, might work one year, might not work another? And that's something you really have to think about if it's worth going down the library route and not having, maybe not having it or not being able to have it in the future. So you really have to do a check-in of the content. And so I think a lot about, kind of where the world has gone since 2020 and, where we've gone with diversity, equity, inclusion training and just kind of that climate that we're currently in. And one thing that I always know about content is that, we're always growing and evolving and we're doing better, right? We're learning more and we're correcting maybe examples in the past that probably wouldn't fly today. So just a totally random example, but something that I think about with this is when, the Friends reunion just came out and I was reading so many articles about how great it was, but also different articles that were talking about, how it doesn't really, certain parts of it don't really age well with the current climate that we're in. And so that's something that I also thought about with our content or with off-the-shelf content is making sure that content ages well for as we grow and evolve. So when you are talking to a potential off-the-shelf content vendor, just having conversations around, checking in on the content, reviewing it for its relevancy, reviewing it to make sure that maybe, examples might need to be updated to meet the times better, or they just don't make sense anymore because we're moving away from being a everyone in the office type of organization and we're moving to a remote type of organization. So our needs have shifted and our needs have changed. So definitely doing that kind of check-in with the content and just making sure that it's still relevant for today, because you don't want to get stuck with content that was made back in the 90s that don't make sense in 2021. And just along with that, something that I've seen, and I laugh because I laugh at my husband's training for his job. Sometimes it can be kind of cheesy, the examples that they use depending on the topic that you're talking about. So I think of this a lot with compliance training, sexual harassment training, things like that. So he has recurring compliance training that he has to complete for his job every single year. And he always laughs when he takes a sexual harassment training because he just didn't the example that they're using is so just yes, it's cheesy, but it's also kind of far-fetched. It doesn't really make sense. It's not actual sexual harassment. I mean, it is. I'm sure people have experienced this type of sexual harassment, but it's not the true sexual harassment that you're kind of that blurs the line. When you see it, it's very obvious that they're sexually harassing the woman, and you're kind of making a joke where the person watching it is actually laughing because it's just so silly. And that's not what you want out of your sexual harassment training, right? That's not what you want out of your compliance training. You don't want people to laugh at how cheesy or how outdated it is. You want people to actually watch it and be like, wow, I learned something new. I didn't realize that having, that type of conversation or making that type of comment, while in my mind, it was totally innocent and that was not my intention, the impact that they're receiving, it's a form of sexual harassment. So that is the learning that you want to have happen, right? You don't want people to watch something and laugh and be like, oh yeah, duh, that's sexual harassment, that he blatantly said something stupid that no one should be saying to a woman or anyone. So I definitely would recommend just watching some of the content and just keeping that in the back of your mind, because you also don't want to, yes, it's off-the-shelf e-learning is cheaper, but it's still an expense. So you don't want to put out that money and put out that expense and then people are laughing at the content. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as well. So now let's talk about the pros of custom training. So obviously the pro, it's completely unique for you. It's made for you. So I love to think of this kind of battle between pro versus off the shelf as, when you buy a suit or a dress or something just off the rack, right? And you have to, it might fit you, but it's not going to fit you like a glove. There are always going to be some tweaks that you would need to make in order to make it really, truly fit you and make you feel really good when wearing that suit. Whereas when you're creating a custom, training, or you're getting that suit custom made for you, it's made for you. It's made to your measurements. It's made to your liking. It's made to fit you and make you look and feel your best and putting that best foot forward. And so that's always the comparison that I love to give between custom and off-the-shelf e-learning that really kind of resonates with a lot of clients and potential clients, because they've all felt that where something doesn't fit just right, but when they get something made for them, they always feel just the best, and they feel like it fits them perfectly and it meets exactly the needs because you created it with your needs in mind. So it's definitely something to think about when you're creating custom solutions, that it's totally you. It could be branded for you. It's your logo, it's your look and feel, it's your brand is coming through. So your employees also feel, wow, like this, they took the time to really think about the culture of the organization, or how we use the tool, or how we create, that type of workflow, or how we do that process at work, or that standard operating procedure, right? They really think about how we use it, and they created training for us. So they feel more invested because they can see themselves and where they fit into that process and where they fit within the organization. So I think that's a really powerful thing, powerful advantage that you have with custom solutions. So the other big pro with custom solutions is that you completely own the content because it's yours. You own all licenses outright. Everything is for you, so you don't have to worry. As I have had clients come to me about other solutions and things like that, and they've asked, well, do we own the license? Like even just images, right? Do we own the license for that image and all of these things? And they do ask about what licensing is like. They don't have to worry about that when we create the content completely for them. And then the last big pro for custom solutions, and I know that there's a million, but we'll try to keep this kind of short, but the last big pro is the fact that the learning modality, you can make sure that learning modality truly meets that is truly the best solution for the content. So if the content is something where you really need to dive in and practice and do some scenarios and do some of that role-based play, you're not just sitting there and watching videos and being a bystander of your content, because you can create those simulations, you can create those scenarios, you can really take the time to make it as interactive. Sometimes with some off-the-shelf solutions, that's just not an option, right? It could just be the fact that you're getting a suite of videos, and video is great, but it's not the best way to learn a lot of things, right? And maybe some things are interactive and some aren't, but there aren't, the scenarios that are unique to your organization, right? There aren't the scenarios that a learner, an employee are going to see as they go through their journey working at your organization. And that is truly a pro of custom solutions, that you can build all of those things in and they can feel as real life as possible and really be the best solution to learn that material. So the cons, and I think that they're pretty easy to spot, but it is more time consuming and it is more expensive because you're creating a, custom solution, right? It's like building a custom car. They're expensive as opposed to the one that's off the lot that's already just there. So with that content being more time consuming, there is definitely something I want you to also think about, is that part of that solution should include analysis, learning about your organization, learning about your learners. So while it is more time consuming in the fact that it will take longer, right? And when you want to create so much content at one time, it definitely does feel like a super long game that we'll never get to. You will, or you would. But taking that time to really, have a vendor that understands your needs, understands, your company, understands how your learners work day in and day out, interact with each other, all of those things, that's going to shine through the content. So yes, it is time consuming. There's, back and forth reviews, and there's more things that you have to think about when you're reviewing the content, but you create something that's totally unique for you, which is really nice. And back to what I just said about that longer game, for an organization that's not super established, and so you're kind of starting with like no content or no learning, it's definitely a longer game, right? Because you can only create so much training between maybe instructional designers at your organization or working with an outside vendor because of time, budget, all of those things. But it is something that you can work towards. And that's where I'm going to get into kind of that conversation of what's best for you. So my overall kind of approach is, where are you in your organization? Where are you in your organization's, plan with your learning culture? Or do you have content that's already been created and you're just looking to supplement here and there? Then maybe Off the Shelf is good for you to supplement some things, but maybe you're better off going with the custom solutions because your learners are expecting more of that custom solution. Or if you're a new organization that really wants to build a culture of learning and a culture of growing, and not just at, how to do your job, but how to be a better human, then off-the-shelf solutions could be really great for that, because you can get some of those things that, are kind of, tried and true type of learning, tried and true content, things that, everyone, it's not going to change too much whether you create it custom or off the shelf, or you get it off the shelf, right? So things like, negotiating skills, time management, right? How to, properly, write an email, in an intern working in a global company or something like that, right? Or, unconscious bias, things, all those types of trainings, those can definitely be off the shelf. And that could be just kind of standalone and things that you can offer to your employees that are, to aid them to grow professionally and, to continue to enhance them as humans. But what I think is actually a more powerful strategy for organizations is to combine the two. So I think about, your customer service department, how to deal with a difficult customer. We may all have different takes or different extra tips, but the basis the basics are all the same, right? So is there an opportunity for you to buy a customer solution, dealing with difficult customer training that covers the basics, and they go through that to, learn the foundation, speak the same language, and then you supplement with a custom solution. So maybe it's a custom e-learning module, right? That you take them through scenarios that are actual scenarios they are going to deal with your customers. So looking at actual phone calls, actual real questions that you get, things that have actually happened, right? And walking them through a simulation or scenario-based, module where they actually have to take what they learned in the previous off-the-shelf content and apply it to your actual scenario, right? Because I think that sometimes with off-the-shelf solutions, they'll have examples, but if, the example doesn't match your industry or doesn't match the service that your company provides, then your learners aren't going to really understand how it applies to them. Remember, the most important thing in learning for adults is how it impacts them. How is it going to help them? So combining the two will allow you to have that opportunity and will better prepare them to deal with those difficult customers in the way that you want them to. And it doesn't have to be an e-learning course, right? It could maybe be a virtual instructor-led training, or, we're opening back up again. It's an instructor-led training where you're actually, doing role plays, having conversation. You're doing more of like a workshop that's definitely more engaging, and learners are able to learn from how two different people handle a difficult customers and take tips from everyone and have conversation about, why did you ask that, or why did you engage the customer in that way? And they're able to learn. So I think that the mix of the two is really powerful. And I want to make sure that, what we're doing is providing solutions that are best for the learners. So sometimes, I could go in and, if a client were to come to, or a potential client were to come to me and say, I need to build this customer service training and my budget is X, right? Well, I think a really powerful thing as a consultant is to be able to provide them with a solution of taking their budget and buying something off the shelf, which means I'm just kind of leading them to someone else to give them the money, but also providing them with the solution of, hey, but we'll work with you here to make sure the content meets their needs. And I think that that is a really powerful tip for consultants to take away, instructional designers to take away. I think often we want to just scope things because we want the money, right? Or we want the project, or we need the project because there's not a lot coming into the pipeline. I definitely think instructional designers that are watching and listening, being customer first and meeting their needs first before your own is a really powerful place to be, and a way to put out into the universe all that goodwill, all that good fortune, and really that good service for others, and it will come back to you tenfold, because that client's going to remember that you thought of them first and you did what was truly in their best interest, not just in your own, and they'll come back to you. They'll remember that. And if they don't come back to you, they're going to refer you out. So don't think of it as, if you're passing off a client over to, take off-the-shelf training or buy off-the-shelf training, don't think that it's a complete miss for you, because there are opportunities for yourself to provide custom solutions, but also know that you are doing what's in their best interest for their time, budget, and honestly want to make sure that you're doing the best for them, and you're creating something that you can be really proud of, and that you did something for someone else. And I think that's a really great mark of a consultant, and it starts to tip you over to a learning consultant as opposed to an order taker. Okay, friends, do you want more practical advice to help solve business problems? Well, I have the solution for you. It is the very first and very free Anchored in Learning virtual summit. We are going to rethink compliance, rethink culture, and rethink learning and development, and talk about real solutions to real problems that you have as instructional designers and that businesses have day in and day out, so that you can be the best consultant for your clients. So I want you to go down into the description box, and I want you to register for the Anchored in Learning Summit this September 9th and 10th. The list of speakers is incredible, and we're always adding more really cool opportunities for you to learn and grow. So make sure you go right now and you click that link and you register today. Friends, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.